Good morning everyone. Basa na tayo ng Bible. From John 20 na natin. Nehemiah chapter 12 and 13. And Acts chapter 5, hinati siya. Chapter 5 verse 1 to 21. Okay na ulit yung schedule ko. Buon na. Nakalagpas na tayo dun sa lukot na papel. Dito muna tayo sa Acts chapter 5 verse 1 to 21. Basa na guys. Ananias and Sapphira. Now a man named Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, also sold a piece of property. With his wife's full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for himself, but brought the rest and put it at the apostles' feet. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied to men but to God. When Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. Allah. And great fear seized all who heard what had happened. Then the young man came forward, wrapped up his body, and carried him out and buried him. About 3 hours later his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. Peter asked her, Tell me, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land? Yes, she said, that is the price. Peter said to her, How could you agree to test the Spirit of the Lord? Look, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also. And that moment she fell down at his feet and died. Hala. Basta ka nalang mamamatay guys, oh. Sabi na sa iyo, pag gumawa ka ng kasalanan nung araw kamatayan talaga ang katapat. Then the young man came in, and finding her dead, carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. The apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders among the people. Bilisan na natin. And all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their number. As a result, sa verse 15, people brought the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and mats so that at least Peter's shadow might fall on some of them as he passed by. Hindi nakikita ang mga doktor nito. Punta na lang sila kay Peter tsaka kay John. Crowds gathered also from the towns, Crowds gathered also, sa verse 16. Crowds gathered also from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented by evil spirits, and all of them were healed. The apostles persecuted. Then the high priest and all his associates who were members of the party of the Sadducees were filled with jealousy. They arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. But during the night an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. Go, stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people the full message of this new life. Siya nga pala guys, yung mga angel, saan galing yan? Sa heaven ba? Ito nakalagay kasi sa verse 20, ay sa verse 19. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail. So, saan galing yung mga angel na to guys? Sa mga expert nga pala. Galing ba sila sa heaven? So, ibig sabihin, ang dami nang nakatirang angel doon sa heaven. Yun ang kasama ni Father God. Opinion lang natin yun, ha? Angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. Go, stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people the full message of this new life. At daybreak they entered the temple courts as they had been told, and began to teach the people. When the high priest and his associates arrived, they called together the Sanhedrin, the full assembly of the elders of Israel, and sent to the jail for the apostles. So hanggang dyan lang siya, 21. Bukas na yung 22. Dito na tayo sa Nehemiah chapter 12. Nehemiah chapter 12 and 13. Mga pangalan na naman. Basa. Priests and Levites. Diyan ako sumusuko sa mga pangalan. Ang dami-dami. So 12 and 13 tayo. Bukas pala, Easter na siya. So last chapter na yung Nehemiah. Malapit na talaga tayo magtapos sa Bible. Priest and Levites sa chapter 12, guys. These were the priests and Levites who returned with Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and with Jesua, Seraiah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Malot, Hattush, Shekaniah, Rehum, Merimoth, Iddo, Gineton, Abijah, Midjamin, Moadiah, Belga, Shemaiah, Joyarib, Jedaiah, Salo, Amok, Helkiah, and Jedaiah. These were the leaders of the priests and their associates in the days of Jeshua. The Levites were Jeshua, Benoy, Kedmiel, Sherebiah, Judah, and also Mattaniah. Together with his associates was in charge of the songs of thanksgiving, Bokiah, and Uni. Their associates stood opposite them in the services. Jeshua was the father of Joachim, Joachim the father of Eliashib, Eliashib the father of Jehoiada, Jehoiada the father of Jonathan, and Jonathan the father of Jaddua. In the days of Joachim, these were the heads of the priestly families. Of Seraiah's family, Meriah; of Jeremiah's, Hananiah; of Israel's, Meshullam; and of Amariah's, Jehohanan; of Malot's, Jonathan; of Shekaniah, Joseph; of Harim, Edna. Wait ulit. Sana tayo. Ayun, sa verse 15 na tayo. Of Harim's, Edne; of Merimoth's, Helkai; of Iddo's, Zechariah; of Gineton's, Meshullam; of Abijah's, Zikri; of Minamin's, and of Moadiah's, Piltai; of Bilgah's, Shamoah; of Shemaiah's, Jehonathan; of Joyarib's Matinai, of Jedaiah's Uzi, of Salo, Kalai, of Salos, Kalai, sa verse 20, of Amok's Eber, of Hilkiah's Hashabiah, of Jedaiah's Netanel, the family heads of the Levites in the days of Eliashib, Joyada, Johanan, and Jaddua, as well as those of the priests, were recorded in the reign of Darius the Persian. The family heads among the descendants of Levi up to the time of Johanan, son of Eliashib, were recorded in the book of the Annals, and the leaders of the Levites were Hashabiah, Sherebiah, Jeshua, son of Kadmiel, and their associates who stood opposite them to give praise and thanksgiving, one section responding to the other as prescribed by David, the man of God. Sa verse 25, Mataniah, Bakbukiah, Obadiah, Mishallam, Talmon, and Akub were gatekeepers who guarded the storerooms at the gates. They served in the days of Joachim, son of Jeshua, the son of Josadak, and in the days of Nehemiah the governor, and Ezra the priest and scribe. Dedication of the wall of Jerusalem. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived, and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving, and with the music of cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers also were brought together from the region around Jerusalem, from the villages of the Netopamites, Netopatites. Sa verse 29. From Beth Gilgal, and from area of Geba and Asmaveth, for the singers had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. I had the leaders of Judah go up on top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. One was to proceed on top of the wall to the right, toward the Dung Gate. Hoshea and half the leaders of Judah followed them, along with Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah, as well as some priests with trumpets, and also Zechariah, son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zakur, the son of Asaph, and his associates, Shemaiah, Azarel, Milalai, Gilalai, Maya, Nethanel, Judah, and Hanani, with musical instruments prescribed by David, the man of God. Ezra, the scribe, led the procession. At the fountain gate, they continued directly up the steps of the city of David on the ascent to the wall, and passed above the house of David to the water gate on the east. Sa verse 39. Sa verse 38 pala, sorry. The second choir proceeded in the opposite direction. I followed them on top of the wall together with the people, past the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, over the gate of Ephraim, the Jeshanah gate, the Jeshanah gate, the fish gate, the tower of Hananel, and the tower of the 100, as far as the sheep gate. At the gate of the guard they stopped. The 2 choirs that gave thanks then took their places in the house of God. So did I, together with half the officials as well as the priest. Eliakim, Maaziah, Benjamin, Micaiah, Elioenai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with their trumpets, and also Maaseiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Jehohanan, Malchijah, Elam, and Ezer. The choir sang under the direction of Jeshariah. And on the day they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. At that time, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, first fruits, and tithes from the fields around the towns. They were to bring into the storerooms the portions required by the law for the priests and the Levites. For Judah was pleased with the ministering priests and Levites. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification, as did also the singers and the gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there had been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. So in the days of Zerubbabel and of Nehemiah, all Israel contributed the daily portions for the singers and gatekeepers. They also set aside a portion for the other Levites, and the Levites set aside a portion for the descendants of Aaron. Nehemiah final reforms. On the day, the book of Moses, sa chapter 13 na tayo. On that day, the book of Moses was read aloud in the hearing of the people. Yan talaga gusto kong mabasa, the book of Moses. Was read aloud in the, nakalagay kasi guys, sa chapter 13 verse 1, on that day the book of Moses was read aloud in the hearing of the people, and there it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever be admitted into the assembly of God. Excuse me. Inom muna tayo tubig. May nagbabara na naman. May blockages lang talaga eh. So sa verse 2 na tayo, because they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but had heard Baalam to call a curse down on them. Hindi talaga tayo nakaka-straight ng basa guys, nang walang hindrances. Asap pa. Because they had not, katulad yan, no, nagluluha na mata ko. Naghalo na yung luha at pawis. O, diba? On that day, the book of Moses, on that day, the book of Moses was read aloud in the hearing of the people, and there it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever be admitted into the assembly of God. Because they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but had hired Baalam to call a curse down on them. Our God, however, turned the curse into a excuse me. Busog ulit sa tubig. Into a blessing. When the people, sa verse 3, chapter 13, verse 3 ng Nehemiah, when the people heard this law, they excluded from Israel all who were of foreign descent. Before this, Eliashib the priest had been put in charge of the storerooms of the house of our God. He was closely associated with Tobiah, and he had provided him with a large room formerly used to store the grain offerings and incense and temple articles, and also the tithes of grain, new wine, and oil prescribed for the Levites, singers, and gatekeepers, as well as the contributions for the priests. But while all this was going on, I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I had returned to the king. Sometime later, I asked his permission and came back to Jerusalem. Here I learned about Here I learned about the evil thing Eliashib had done in providing Tobiah a room in the courts of the house of God. Here I learned about the evil thing. Yung sa ano guys. Eliashib had done in providing Tobiah a room in the courts of the house of God. So, verse 8 na tayo. I had greatly displeased and thrown all Tobiah's household goods out of the room. I gave orders to purify the rooms, and then I put back into them the equipment of the house of God, with the grain offerings and the incense. I also learned that the portions assigned to the Levites had not been given to them, and that all the Levites and singers responsible for the service had gone back to their own fields. So I rebuked the officials and asked them, "Why is the house of God neglected?" Then I called them together and stationed them at their posts. All Judah brought the tithes of grain, new wine, and oil into the storerooms. And I put Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and a Levite named Pedaiah in charge of the storerooms, and made Hanan, son of Zakur, the son of Mattaniah, their assistant, because these men were considered trustworthy. They were made responsible for distributing the supplies to their brothers. Ewan ko ba guys, bakit kailangan pa natin basahin yan? Ngayon kaya, nandyan pa sila? Siyempre wala na, diba? Ay, grabe ng pawis. Sa verse 14, Remember me for this day, O my God, and do not blot out what I have so faithfully done for the house of my God and its services. In those days I saw men in Judah trading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in grain and loading it on donkeys, together with wine, grapes, figs, and all other kinds of loads. Bilisan na natin guys. Dito na tayo sa karugtong ng other kinds of loads. And they were bringing all this into Jerusalem on the Sabbath. Therefore I warned them against selling food on that day. Men from Tyre who live in Jerusalem were bringing in fish and all kinds of merchandise and selling them in Jerusalem on the Sabbath to the people of Judah. Hindi ko na talaga kaya. Init, grabe. Tiyagaan yun na lang yung ingay dyan. Yung sound. Sobrang init talaga. I revoke sa verse 17. I rebuked the nobles of Judah and said to them, What is this wicked thing you are doing, desecrating the Sabbath day? Didn't your forefathers do the same thing, so that our God brought all this calamity upon us and upon this city? So huwag talaga magtinda sa araw ng pahinga, kasi may kalamiting ipaparosa. Sa panahon kasi natin ngayon, no, kahit Sabbath, ordinary days na siya. Diba? Ordinary days na. Pagkasimba mo ng mga ilang oras, trabaho ka na agad. Ngayon nga, wala nang ano eh. Kasi nga, diba, COVID-19, so sarado yung mga simbahan. Magtatrabaho ka na lang. Nakalagay kasi sa verse 18, guys. Didn't your forefathers do the same thing so that our God brought all this calamity upon us and upon this city? Now you are stirring up more wrath against Israel by discreting the Sabbath. So yun, napaka-importante ng Sabbath sa kanila. Kahit naman dapat tayo, kaya lang may COVID-19. So yun. Yung buko nagtatayuan na. Hinto na raw tayo. Sa verse 19, when evening shadows fell on the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I ordered the doors to be shut and not open until the Sabbath was over. I stationed some of my own men at the gates so that no load could be brought in on the Sabbath day. Once or twice the merchants and sailors of all kinds of goods spent the night outside Jerusalem, but I warned them and said, why do you spend the night by the wall? If you do this again, lay hands on you. About I will lay hands on you from the time when they no longer came to this on the Sabbath. Ayun, bawal. Then I commanded the Levites to purify themselves and go and guard the gates in order to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember me for this also, O my God, and show mercy to me according to your great love. Sa verse 23, moreover, in those days I saw men of Judah who had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod or the language of one of the other peoples, and he did not know how to speak the language of Judah. I rebuked them and called curses down on them. I beat some of the men and pulled out their hair. I made them take an oath in God's name and said, you are not give your daughters in marriage to their sons, nor are you to take their daughters in marriage for your sons, or for yourselves. Was it not because of marriages like this that Solomon, king of Israel, sinned? Among the many nations there was no king like him. He was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. But even he was led into sin by foreign women. So, bawal talaga mag-asawa ng foreigners. Must we hear now that you are doing, sa kanila ha, sa Israel. Must we hear now that you too are doing all this terrible wickedness and are being unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign women? One of the sons of Joiada, son of Eliashib, the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat the Horonite, and I drove him away from me. Remember them, O my God, because they defiled the priestly office and the covenant of the priesthood and of the Levites. So I purified the priest and the Levites of everything foreign and assigned them duties each to his own task. I also made provision the contribution of wood and designated times and for the first fruits. Remember me with favor, O my God. So hanggang diyan na siya. Bukas sa Book of Esther na tayo. Bye everyone. God bless.